Well, the Los Angeles Dodgers are not World Series champions yet.
Deontae Johnson on his way to Baltimore from the Carolina Panthers.
The Anthony Richardson era in Indianapolis comes to a screeching halt.
The Houston Texans will be without star receiver Stephon Diggs after losing him to a torn ACL.
The Dallas Mavericks get a win on the road, second night of a back-to-back against the Timberwolves.
The Locked On Podcast Network presents The Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports. You are Locked On Yankees, your daily New York Yankees podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hallelujah. Put the brooms away. Series isn't over yet. They showed some life and from unlikely sources, which makes me really happy.
Gutsy. That's the answer that I can give. Gutsy performance. Mm-hmm. Aaron Boone, I hope, was looking across the other dugout because while Aaron Boone at points in this series, a lot of this series, gave Dave Roberts a masterclass on how to be an idiot manager. Dave Roberts returned the favor in Game 4 because Dave Roberts, for whatever reason, and I thank him for it. I wish I would, if I could drive to the Bronx and know I would meet up with him, I'd thank him personally. Can't grasp why he waved the white flag in like the 6th inning of this game. You don't give away wins in the postseason.
Yeah.
It was a 2-run game and he decided to just not use his high leverage guys.
Right.
I don't understand why you wouldn't keep the game close, especially with that potent of an offense. Why, that offense is always, when it's a 5-run game, they're still in it.
Right.
And he just decided to save his relievers for later on in the series when you have a chance to end the series tonight. I don't know why he did that. I still can't comprehend it. I don't think I'll ever comprehend it, but I'll be thankful for him for doing it.
Yes.
He let the whole game get away from him and didn't really care. That's fine. Anthony Volpe, obviously the MVP of this game, and a little bit of a key storyline that I think you'll agree with that kind of went a little unnoticed. Aaron Judge looked really good at the plate tonight.
He did. He looked a lot better at the plate.
So I don't want to win one more game and then I'll start talking comeback. I'm not doing that.
Sure.
I will say this though. The only chance they have of coming back is getting him on track.
Yep. And if he does get on track, could be good.
He has to go nuts.
Yeah.
Like he has to have
like Freddie Freeman performance in the next 3 days.
No, Aaron Judge performance in June, July, August.
Which is basically what Freddie Freeman's doing because he won't stop hitting home runs.
And we've seen Aaron Judge do that pretty much throughout this entire season.
Right.
So it's not like it's out of the realm of possibility that he could do it.
Sure.
But even in that, I thought that last at bat to get the 11th run was massive.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't a home run; it was a line drive down the line. But just to see the ball land in fair territory, to drive in a run, just to see it off your bat really well, those kind of at bats mean a fortune for a guy like that. Just to see it land in fair territory, the 2 walk, the walk and the hit by pitch, but the walk especially. Early on where he stayed in that count. He stayed locked in. He spit on pitches out of the zone. Didn't give away a strikeout. He had a really, really nice game. The fly out too. Like he made contact every time he got out too. Wasn't striking out a lot tonight. He looked
that's when you know a guy is coming back from being off kilter. Because he was off kilter. Like there's something just not right with him. And when he's striking out too much and just not looking right at the plate, swinging at things that he normally doesn't swing at and he doesn't fall for, like that he, that maybe he did in the beginning of his career, but he kind of got out of that. And when he gets back into that kind of a funk, you're thinking, all right, something's really wrong here. But yeah, tonight was so much better from him.
Usually his funks start to end when he starts coming out of it. It's usually him walking. That he usually starts having longer at bats, seeing better pitches, and then he starts getting the power involved. Yeah. The only chance again they have of coming back is him going crazy, which is, I mean, we've seen it before. We've seen it plenty of times actually. But overall, I mean, they had an excellent performance, and I want to say this too: if you guys hung on to the broadcast for like 5 minutes after the game ended, and you heard what the players had to say. Usually I don't take a lot of credence from those interviews because they mean nothing. The guys, they're all scripted answers. They say the same thing. 2 answers, though, that you heard from, one from Austin Wells in the interview he had, another from the interview Glaber had. Both gave the same message. Not of, oh, great win, come out and do tomorrow. Both gave, we're deep in the mud right here. We know we just got to do it again tomorrow. And just keep at it. They both gave very, not just very right answers, both gave very, they knew what kind of situation the team is in right now. They know what they're up against. They're not freaking out, but they're ready for what they're up against. And if you get behind the back of Garrett Cole and Garrett Cole throws a gem, all hands on deck. I think you're in a good spot. We do have to discuss. I think we'll do it in segment 3, possibly. But Boone made comments on the future of Garrett Cole and the rest of the series earlier today.
Oh yeah,
I think I need your opinion on those because I'm sure you have a nice one.
Yeah, maybe. They needed a game like this. They needed a breakout game like this. This is the first blowout game of the series. In this series between the Dodgers and the Yankees, because the Dodgers have had blowout games in all their other series, but like for the World Series, people were kind of expecting more of this, and it was good to see them have that chance in the later innings to pile on, which they didn't get in last night's game. They could have, but they didn't. And I just think that this can really help them. And again, yes, it's one game at a time. Here's the thing. I'm going to equate this to something. How many years ago now? 17 years ago, I was on Weight Watchers. I'd hit the heaviest weight I'd ever hit in my life, 207.8. Now I'm tall. I'm 5'9" and I have big shoulders and stuff, but that was too big for me. I started Weight Watchers, and instead of thinking in my head, I have to lose 60 pounds, I did it in smaller increments. That's what the Yankees have to do. You can't think we have to win the next 3. You have to think the next game. Don't even think ahead. Think just to what's right. Again, what's right in front of you. Slam the table. What's right in front of you. That's what you have to look at. And that's what they have to do. They can't. What did
you feel about Robert's bullpen decisions at the end of this game?
Thought it was interesting.
I just can't justify those moves because you're in the World Series, damn it. Like, it's a 2-run game. If the game got away from them early on, I have no problem with punting the game. If it gets away from the third inning, if it's 11-1 in the third inning, cool. Punt the game.
Sure, of course. Yes.
When it's a 2-run game late and you have that kind of offense, I don't understand punting the game and not using your high leverage guys. It doesn't make, and I'm not saying that from my perspective of the Yankees because it's double fold. And I know that you're not a fan of this guy, but hear me out because Smoltz made a great opinion later on in this game where he said, not only are you waving the white flag and basically handing the Yankees a victory, you also allowed Boone to not bring Weaver or Canley in late. Boone was planning, which I thought was a stupid move we can get to too. He was planning on asking Luke Weaver to give him a 7-out save, which Luke has never done, and I thought was testy to say the least.
Yeah,
like that move because he's A, never done that, and B, that's asking a lot to get with 2 runs of leeway to ask him to get 7 outs. That's asking a lot out of Luke Weaver, who's never done that before. That's a Mariano-esque request right there. That's not Luke Weaver's territory, but
no,
didn't have to. I didn't like that move. But here's the thing. If you're Dave Roberts and you see Boone doing that, and you probably should think it's as dumb of a move as we think it is, why would you not keep your high leverage guys in to keep it at a 2-run game? Because you got to think, if we have Luke Weaver on his 5th, 6th out of his appearance, he's got to be up there at 30, 40 pitches by now. There's your chance to get to him. You get Freeman back up, you could tie the game with 1 swing. I don't understand at that point just waving the white flag and giving the game up because, again, you not only allow the Yankees to just take the win, you also allowed them to not use Weaver for extra pitches. You also allowed Weaver to be fresh for tomorrow because if they use Weaver for 40, 50 pitches to get the win tonight, he likely is not available tomorrow night.
Yeah, he threw 21.
Yeah, so he's readily available for tomorrow night.
Yeah.
You could have made it so Weaver wasn't available tomorrow night. You already thought you were going to lose anyway. So you could have made it so Weaver's not available for tomorrow night. You could have made it so Weaver's going to throw more pitches so you guys see more of Weaver's pitches. And if the Yankees weren't going to use Weaver in the ninth, which I think they were going to, but let's say they weren't going to, they were going to have to go to Canely. You would have made them use Canely. Now Canely gets a day of rest. Weaver only uses 21 pitches. There's so many layers to why Dave Roberts made such a terrible move, just punting this game when it's a 2-run game.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. And that winning $5 bet could come with a Week 9 NFL game. Thursday night features a desperate New York Jets side against the first-place team in Houston. FanDuel likes the desperation. They have Aaron Rodgers and company favored by 1.5. I mean, the Texans and the Jets have opposite records, but I guess the Texans are hurt at receiver. I don't know. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Well, the Los Angeles Dodgers are not World Series champions yet.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
A 3-1 lead still in the World Series, and you don't necessarily have to press a panic button yet.
Yeah, absolutely. The Dodgers came into this game with a game plan, and the game plan was, let's see if the offense can win this game for us. And when the offense didn't win the game for them, they stuck to the game plan of, all right, let's use our bad pitchers. And that, to that extent, it worked as planned. Obviously, ideal would have been if the offense had won the game for him and, then kind of forced Dave Roberts' hand to go to his high leverage relievers. But the fact that, once Daniel Hudson didn't have it, gave up the grand slam, and then the offense wasn't really able to put up much of a fight after that, it basically became a case where, all right, this is where we see Brent Honeywell. This is why he's on the roster. Not to pitch well, but to eat innings. He and Landon Knack pitched the last, 5 innings of the game. The Dodgers made it through. I'd say Daniel Hudson is the only guy who pitched today who has even a chance of pitching the rest of the series, unless there's a blowout one way or the other. This was very much a low leverage game. And, the luxury you have when you're up 3 games to none to be able to reset your bullpen, knowing we need to win one of the next 4 games. Obviously, you don't want it to go to game 7, but this game increases their chances of winning game 5 or 6, even though it came at the cost of losing game 4.
Yeah, and realistically, if you named off Ben Kasparius, Daniel Hudson, Landon Knack, and Brent Honeywell, you would think that one of the other 3 not named Daniel Hudson might have been the ones that struggled. And Honeywell did struggle, but it was not, kind of a lose-lose situation for him. Like, Hudson gives up the grand slam. Knack goes 4 innings, gives up just the 1 run. And, I feel like I saw Landon Knack's name a lot more than I should have in the sense of, and it wasn't praised. Like, he did his job. Daniel Hudson's the one that did this. If you have an issue with the game, the way Roberts managed the game, like, it wasn't Landon Knack going 4 innings. It was Daniel Hudson, one, not being good on his own terms, and then Roberts having to kind of stick with them there. And it was, it's just annoying. And it reminds you of, games 2 and 5 of the last series, where more so game 2 than game 5, where a grand slam get the Dodgers in. Last time it was Landon Knack. This time it wasn't. And the Dodgers couldn't really recover offensively. And that's kind of where it sits here. They got it down to 5-4, gets up to 6-4. That's still a winnable game, but that's, you ran out of juice with Knack. You had to go to Honeywell in the 9th. And a lot happened that inning, especially at the start of that inning, that maybe, Anthony Volpe, did he foul it off? They only really showed one replay that I saw on the Fox broadcast, and it couldn't really tell. It didn't look like he did. If Gavin Lux is able to tag him a little bit in a different spot, or hold the glove a little tighter, that doesn't happen, and maybe that inning goes, and the Dodgers, maybe have a chance in the bottom of the ninth. But the game went how we thought, just maybe not the way we thought it was going to go specifically.
Yeah, the fact is, a bullpen game, with knowing that the Dodgers were going to try to reset their high leverage relievers, it was a game they were likely. It was kind of a heat check game. All right, are we so much better than the Yankees that we can even beat them with a bullpen game? And in this case, the answer was no, because this wasn't a bullpen game like we saw against the Padres, where it was 8 guys to get through 9 innings and it was all your best relievers. This was the exact opposite of that. I saw a tweet from some guy who's pops. He has a lot of followers. I don't know what he is, but he said a bullpen game was a bad choice for the Dodgers. Like, choice? Like, the 3 options they had to start this game all pitched in this game. Don't call it a bullpen game. Call it a Ben Casparius start if you want. Either way, the fact is, this is the lot the Dodgers have been dealt. They have 3 starters who they trust. And so far, they've been very successful this postseason. And like you mentioned, game 2 against the Mets. What happened in game 3? The offense showed up. The Dodgers won the game. Game 5 against the Mets. What happened in game 6? The offense showed up. The Dodgers won the game. They do face Garrett Cole in game 5. It's going to be an uphill battle. They've already won one Garrett Cole start this series. Maybe they do it again. Maybe it does go home for game 6. The Dodgers are going to win this series. It's the fact that they didn't win it in game 4. Yes, I would much rather be doing an episode without you right now, Vince, because you are in the locker room getting sprayed with champagne, and I am hyperventilating because my favorite team just won the World Series. That'll happen tomorrow or Friday or whenever. It's going to happen. And this is just one of those games where I don't know. I wanted them to win, but this does. I think it gives them a very good chance to be in good position to win one of the next 2 games.
Yeah, and I see the arguments and everything else about we're you're getting the Yankees into a rhythm and blah blah and all this other stuff. Like, they had one swing that those first few innings that really didn't. Like, Daniel Hudson loaded the bases almost on his own, and then Volpe hit one that went over the wall. It wasn't like the Yankees were hitting and got
after the grand slam. They had 5 runs on 3 hits at that point.
Yeah, exactly. And the last inning, it looked like Brent Honeywell. Maybe there was a joke out there about him throwing BP like he did to Mookie, and maybe that is the thing. But it sucks that there wasn't a 4th starter. You think, or it sucks that they didn't trust someone like Knack to maybe start the game. Maybe things go a little bit different. Maybe the offense, the offense did get out ahead. But I will say, Yankees, even when the Dodgers went up in this game, Yankee Stadium was a lot different than it was last night. And maybe it was a carefree attitude and they were just more into it. But they did a good job, and then obviously they got rewarded for it. But it sucks to not get the sweep. I really felt that the offense was gonna push them over the top today, and they haven't. And we're definitely gonna talk about the offense a little bit later, because they haven't been that good in this series overall. But they have come up in the spots that they needed to. Well, and Freddie Freeman has been absolutely on fire. So, but yeah, it sucks not to get the sweep. I really thought it was gonna happen. And you can feel the strings in the back of your brain starting to turn about getting into a spiraling effect if you want to, but I'm not quite there yet.
I'm not even close. I am no less confident that the Dodgers are going to win the World Series than I was last night when we were talking about them going up 3-0.
Deontae Johnson on his way to Baltimore from the Carolina Panthers.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast.
Man, I was expecting a move for the Ravens. I didn't necessarily. We talked about it this morning on the episode with Kadri Ismail, former Ravens receiver. We expected a move, but this kind of happened all pretty quickly. Deontae Johnson's name has started to get floated around in those rumors about, he's probably going to be dealt. Baltimore certainly could have stood to add a wide receiver. I get that from a holistic perspective, we're going to grade this trade deadline once it's over, right? We're a week away, okay? We're going to just talk about this move is its own, and then we're also going to talk about what could be coming down the line. So this move on its own is Deontae Johnson is a very well-established veteran, was traded to Carolina in the offseason in exchange for Deontae Jackson from the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Baltimore obviously very well acquainted with Deontae Johnson. From this move only, just separating it from all of other Baltimore's needs, of all of those needs, I think it's a really solid move. I think for a receiver of Deontae Johnson's caliber, giving up your own 5th round pick for Carolina's 6th round pick, I mean, that's essentially getting him for free, because you're probably only moving down what? If not saying the Ravens are winning the Super Bowl or anything, but let's say their pick is in the mid to high 20s, low 30s this year, and Carolina has a top 5, top 10 pick, you're probably only moving down, 5-10 spots to go get a player who can help you now in Deontae Johnson. He's going to be a free agent after this season, but now the reports are that Carolina is helping Baltimore out with this deal and paying some of his remaining salary. So the move would have been, he'd have about, I believe, $3-ish million left on that deal. Carolina's paying some of that salary. So now I believe the number is $625,000 is what Baltimore is on the hook for moving forward, which again, like the Ravens in the wide receiver room, we had talked about it, right? They need some level of, okay, could you get a 3rd wide receiver that could maybe split time with Nelson Aguilar, or even push Nelson Aguilar down to a 4? Because you have Zay Flowers and you have Rashad Bateman. I get Rashad had a tough week last week, was a tough week for really all the receivers last week. But getting a Deontae Johnson, you can slot him in as that 3rd wide receiver, and you're not necessarily taking away snaps from Rashad Bateman. You're not taking away snaps from Zay Flowers. There's no competition. And now you have, I think, a top 3 of Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, and Deontae Johnson. That's decently solid. It's not Devontae Adams. It's not Amari Cooper. It's not, depending on how you think about DeAndre Hopkins. I personally don't think it's DeAndre Hopkins here, but I think it's an overall sound move for very little cost and very little risk, right? Now, is this the be-all, end-all for the Ravens? I hope not, right? I hear and look, I see everybody in the chat talking about defense, right? I hear you. The Ravens should go out there and get a pass rusher or a member of the secondary. I don't think this should be it. I don't think they should be done. They should do more. But if we're just cutting off that conversation and we're just talking about this move as its own thing, I really like it. I really like it for the Ravens. Now, Deontae Johnson for Carolina this season has played in 7 games for them over the course of the year. It's been a pretty solid season overall, I'd say. He's not blowing anything out of the water here, but 30 catches for 357 yards and 3 touchdowns, and he's somebody that can go get you yards. He's good for a big play here and there. And for Deontae Johnson, he's a shifty route runner, and this Ravens team is full of route runners. I know, he's not like the best route runner in the league, but he is shifty in that he can separate at the top of his routes and kind of just, reading both when he was in Pittsburgh and just in Carolina. One of the things that makes him good as a route runner, and it's one of the things Zay Flowers is very good at, is he gears down. With a lot of guys, or maybe not a lot, but with some guys with route running, when they gear down, it's very clunky, right? You can tell when they're gearing down, and as a defensive back, you can adjust to that and alter your course of action. With guys like Zay and Deontae is to a less, I think Zay is one of the best in the league at doing this, but Deontae to a lesser extent. When those guys gear down, it's a very smooth, fluid movement, right? Slow, fluid movement. That to me is really what it is. Now, his route running has improved over the course of his career as well. He also uses his body well and can make catches outside of his frame. His route tree is very full. There are a lot of routes that he can run. I think that will be something that Todd Monken will do with him. But there are issues with drops. Drops is the big thing with Deontae Johnson. And obviously, I think that's kind of like, duck and cover, shield your eyes type deal after what we saw last week. So at the end of the day, the drops have to stop, and they really haven't for Deontae over the course of his career. That's the big thing that you got to worry about with Deontae is the drops, right? It is. And I think for him, when we talk about things being contagious for teams, drops can be contagious. For him, he sometimes, I don't know if it's getting in his head or whatnot, and we saw this even when Baltimore played Pittsburgh, when Deontae was still with the Steelers. He can get in his own head, and that can lead to just a spiral for him. There are also questions about the effort at times from Deontae. You know, there have been a couple of incidents with his effort and, you know, his want to there. And he also, and we see this with a lot of guys, he tries to do too much sometimes when he's in the open field, and that causes him, you know, back juking into losses of yards and stuff along those lines. He's not great as a blocker either. Like, you shouldn't be using him in that situation. I don't think they necessarily will. But when he's frustrated, he shows it, right? It's poor body language. He gets upset, gets frustrated. And I think that's one of the reasons Pittsburgh was willing to move off of him, because I think on the field, look, he's a great player with some, you know, cons you got to worry out for. But, you know, this is what it is. And yeah, Terrence, I hear you. This year it's not been bad for Deontae in terms of drops, but over the course of his career, the longevity of his career, drops have been a big thing for Deontae. He's gotten better at it, but, you know, at the end of the day, it is what it is. And yes, again, the compensation, fifth round pick going to Carolina, Deontae Johnson, and a sixth round pick going back to the Ravens. And look, Nick has a point right here. Let's talk about this for a second, right? This move along with 11 draft picks shows me Mr. EDC is making more trades to help the defense, right? This is what I'm talking about. The Ravens still have 11 draft picks. Nick, this is a great point. They still have 11. They should not be done. They shouldn't be done. I get that there's frustration because it's not a defensive move. I understand. The Ravens, I think, need to make one, if not two, defensive moves, right? But there was also this thing where here's how I look at this. All right, let's go back to last offseason. Nelson Aguilar was signed by the Ravens, and everybody hated the move. Everybody was on here talking about, oh, this move is terrible. This move is awful, horrible. And I said, you know, if this is it, it's not great. If the Ravens add somebody else, then we can look back on it. And the Ravens signed Odell, and obviously it didn't work out for Odell, but it was the point of they needed to sign a vet, and they signed two of them. But with Nelson Aguilar, he ended up being better than Odell, if we're being honest. So let's look at it this way. If this is it for the Ravens at the trade deadline, if their only move is Deontae Johnson, it's a failure of a trade deadline, in my opinion. All right? Because they need to add defensively. They do. They need to add defensively. If it's Deontae Johnson and a pass rusher, Deontae Johnson and a secondary member, then I think we can look at this and look at it with refreshed eyes, a refreshed opinion, right? And Max, this is a point here too, right? Are we acting like the Ravens don't need another receiver? Worst case, he helps Zay and Bate get open. It's another weapon. Was receiver the biggest need for the Ravens? No. Receiver is not the biggest need for the Ravens, which is why they need to do more, right? They need to do more to add to this team to make sure that they are at their absolute best heading into the playoffs, right? They can't do it. But in terms of them barely giving up anything here, they're getting a player that I think is either on par, if not better, than Nelson Aguilar, right? I think that's what the whole point was, where it's don't take snaps away from Rashad if you don't have to. Don't take snaps away from Zay if you don't have to. But go and get somebody that can be a weapon, yeah. But now you have another weapon. Now you need to shift your focus, if you're the Ravens, to the defensive side of the ball, right? To the defensive side of the ball. Now it's all defense time. You don't need another receiver. You don't need anything more on the offensive side of the ball. The defense is the big issue right now. Deontae Johnson is a start. It's a start, but it cannot be the end, right? It cannot be the end. So they have to be able to go out there and make a big move on the defensive side of the ball. But for the offensive side of the ball, you look at this and you say, hey, this is a start. But let's see what they can do. Let's see what they do over the next week. But yeah, here, flagship right here. Not sure if he's an upgrade over Bate, but for sure Nelly. Yeah, I don't think at this point, I think the Ravens have full trust in Rashad. They're not trying to go in there and take his snaps away. I get it was a rough game for him on Sunday. Rough is probably a nice way to put that. But right, this is something where now Nelson Aguilar is back to being your fourth wide receiver. And I feel a lot more confident in that group as opposed to Nelson being your three. So let's just see what it is, right? Let's see how it all unfolds for him. We're going to be back here. I'm probably going to be doing an instant reaction after the trade deadline, regardless of if the Ravens do anything or not next week. And we can look back on this as either, okay, this was the start, and then the Ravens went over and they added a pass rusher, or they added a secondary member, or that was it. And we have to look back on this and be like, they probably got a little too stingy with their draft picks, and they needed to add somebody else, but they didn't. And by the way, Deontae up in 500. Thank you for this. He's 5'10". Yes, he is. He's a 5'10" receiver, 183 pounds. He's not your bit. I will say this about it. This is not the type of receiver the Ravens needed. He's a talented player, but it's not the type of receiver the Ravens needed. If I had my pick of guys or prototypes, I guess, bigger bodied player is what the prototype I would have gone with. But now, Devontae's out of the equation, Amari's out of the equation, DeAndre's out of the equation. I don't think Cooper Kupp's getting moved at this point. I think they needed to add something on offense, but they need to add something on defense more. So if this move stops them from adding defense, I don't like it as much. If they can add Deontae and the defensive playmaker, I like it. But for now, if we're just grading or talking about the move, and yep, I see this one. Sutton was the one. That would have been my top choice, but I'm sure Denver either didn't want to move him or the draft capital was too high. But to me, I think if we look at this move just by itself, I think it's a fine move. I think it's a fine move for the Ravens as a start. But let's see how they finish out the deadline.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. And that winning $5 bet could come with a Week 9 NFL game. Thursday night features a desperate New York Jets side against the first-place team in Houston. FanDuel likes the desperation. They have Aaron Rodgers and company favored by 1.5 points. The Texans and the Jets have opposite records, but I guess the Texans are hurt at receiver. I don't know. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
The Anthony Richardson era in Indianapolis comes to a screeching halt.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast.
The Colts have made the massive move of benching 22-year-old quarterback for 39-year-old quarterback Joe Flacco going forward. This comes off the heels of a game where Anthony Richardson was not his best in this one. He completed 10 of 32 passes for a 31% completion percentage for 175 yards, a touchdown, and a pick in the Colts' loss against the Houston Texans. And the Colts decided to make the move to Joe Flacco for the rest of the season or just for a game. I don't know. I don't know what it is right now. We're kind of just reacting to this news as it just happened. But yeah, man, the Colts are kind of moving off of the Anthony Richardson project for the time being after just 10 total starts across 2 seasons. And look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it here. Anthony Richardson was not good this year and was not good whatsoever in his starts this season. It was regression in every single sense of the word. It was not positive play from him. And honestly, this past week wasn't even his worst start, but it wasn't a positive one either. We haven't seen many positive moments from Anthony Richardson this year, but this is a tough move to make, man. It is a tough move to make. I mean, this is a quarterback who the Colts drafted at 21 years old after just a handful of college starts. You knew this was going to be a project going in, and they made the commitment last season in week 1. We are going to start him, and we're going to let him play through this, and then they get out there during the first season. He shows some positive traits last year, gets hurt, comes back this year, has some struggles, and isn't, the same guy they showed in week 1 of last year, just in last year in general, and how they're moving to Joe Flacco. And again, even if this is a 1-week thing or a rest of the year thing, whatever, look, the odds of this thing working out regardless are going to be very low, but if you're already benching the kid at this point, it's probably not going to work. It's probably not going to work. If you feel the need to move to 39-year-old Joe Flacco at this point and benching the kid, it's not going to work, man. It's over. It's over. Even if he becomes a starter again next year or the year after or whatever, I don't know what the plan is right now. I don't even know if the Colts know what the plan is right now. this experiment, this project is just not going to work. And there's just no way you can convince me in any feasible mind that the Colts are, Joe Flacco fixes everything. Getting Joe Flacco out here is all of a sudden the fix to anything. Like, there's nothing that you gain from this. A 39-year-old quarterback who is barely the present, because at most you're going to get maybe 9 wins out of this guy and earn the right to get blown out by Kansas City in the first round of the playoffs. And like at worst, again, he's just as bad as Anthony Richardson. So I just don't know what the thought process is here. You put him in there in week 1 of last season at 21 years old to get him those reps he needed on the field. He barely had any starts in college, and you're completely committing to him playing through the bad moments. And don't get me wrong, the bad moments were there this season. There were a lot of bad moments. I am in no way trying to defend his play on the field this year, because it simply wasn't good enough. But again, you take a 21, 22-year-old quarterback with that in mind. The mind in mind is him working through those bad moments and eventually getting to where you need him to be. And again, if you give up after the season, because say week 18, this player is just not showing progress, it is regression at every sense, and you have to pivot in the offseason, that's perfectly fine. But what are you giving me the rest of the season with Joe Flacco? What is this doing for the future or for the present? Like the present, again, do you think this team is a Super Bowl ready roster? This Super Bowl ready roster with a below average defense, with linebackers that can't cover worth a darn, with wide receivers who can't separate whatsoever, with an injured offensive line. Bernhard Ryman's out this week. Right guard is out for the rest of the season, with tight ends who I don't even like. What have the tight ends even done this year? Like, I know I'm just kind of rambling here because there's some frustration here, but even if Flacco gives you a playoff berth here, even if Flacco gives you a divisional win, like John is saying here in the comment section, say he's doing any of this stuff for you, you're not going to the Super Bowl. So what does that matter? Like, what does that matter in the slightest? Oh, wow, cool. We got to the playoffs with a 39-year-old quarterback. He retires. Okay, now what are we doing? What's the plan right here? So I don't know, man. I don't know what the plan is here for the Colts. And you guys are putting a Twitter thing in here too, which is very helpful here. Stephen Holder is saying that the decision was for Richard to take a step back, take a break from the pressures of the job, and try to grow during this time. Well, here's my response to that. The biggest thing that was said about Richardson coming out as a prospect is he just did not have enough starts. He did not see the field enough in college. We are going to get him out there, and we are going to see what he can do and have him grow on the job. What is he gaining from sitting? He sat all of last year. He sat for most of his college career. Him sitting more going forward, when you eventually put him on the field, he's going to have logged more games in the NFL on the bench than on the field. Like, what is sitting going to do for him here? I'm not even saying that he's destined to work. Like, this is not an emotional reaction to the Anthony Richardson project potentially not working. That I don't like it is part of this, But the thing that frustrates me is this commitment to mediocrity. It's this, we might be in jeopardy of not getting to our 8 to 9 wins. So let's get Joe Flacco out there. Let's build this thing back up to our 9 wins and be happy with this season. And oh, shoot, we were so close to making the playoffs. That's what this is more about. This is Jim Irsay seeing the Colts get swept by the Houston Texans and saying, we need somebody out there who can move the ball a little bit more. And even if Joe Flacco can move the ball a little bit more, who cares? Who cares? Where's the future? Where's the present with that? This roster is not going anywhere with Joe Flacco. It wasn't going anywhere with Anthony Richardson either this season. Like, don't get me wrong, but he's a young quarterback who at least you could somewhat bank on the future with that. You could bank on maybe one day, even if it is a fruitless, just hope for the future, you could bank on that with him. You can't bank on anything with Joe Flacco. What is Joe Flacco getting you here? Outside of a just miraculous, 40-year-old quarterback somehow working, like to drag this below average team to a Super Bowl, that like, this is it, man. I don't understand this. It's this commitment to being mediocre. And I think at the end of the day, again, the Colts are doing the political rigmarole, right? Or the going through the press. They're doing that rigmarole, whatever the heck that word is with that, where they're going around being like, oh yeah, we're not giving up on his future. Don't worry. You know, the whole Bryce Young thing and all that stuff right there. We need to give him a couple weeks here or the rest of the year to really get the fix around him. But what this really does lead to with the Colts is they're going to go back to the veteran quarterback market. Like, what this means for the Colts is they are back to 2019 Colts, 2020 Colts, 2021 Colts, 2022 Colts. Like, this is just what they're going to be going forward. So after Flacco does his thing this year, gets them to 9 wins and retires or leaves in the offseason, then it'll be a Justin Fields. Then it'll be a Sam Darnold. Then it'll be Russell Wilson on an age 45 year. Like, it's going to be this veteran quarterback thing again. And look, again, like, I'm not saying Richardson prevents that. Like, Richardson at the end of the season, if you felt like you had to move on, that's fine. But Joe Flacco gives you nothing. It gives you nothing. It is completely tapping out on the project you committed to after 10 starts. Again, Richardson was not trending in the right direction, but tapping out completely on it after 10 career starts, it's like, were you really even committed to the process at all? Like, if Richardson struggled after 5 games last year, were you going to pull the rug out from under him on that too? Like, I don't know. I don't know if the Colts were fully committed to this thing because maybe it didn't guarantee their 9-win, perfection that they need every single season.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. And that winning $5 bet could come with a Week 9 NFL game. Thursday night features a desperate New York Jets side against the first-place team in Houston. FanDuel likes the desperation. They have Aaron Rodgers and company favored by 1.5 points. I mean, the Texans and the Jets have opposite records, but I guess the Texans are hurt at receiver. I don't know. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
The Houston Texans will be without star receiver Stephon Diggs after losing him to a torn ACL.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans.
Rough day for the Houston Texans as they lose wide receiver Stephon Diggs due to a torn ACL. Coach D'Amico Ryans announced Tuesday. Texans are losing 47 catches, nearly 500 yards in the air, 3 TDs, but more importantly, they are losing a leader in their locker room and on the field. This is a very tough blow for the Houston Texans, Sarge.
For those of you all who are on this audio journey with us on the Locked On Texans podcast, you can't see me, but I'm currently in all black. And I think that I'm representing the Houston Texans fan base. I think that I'm representing the Houston Texans. It is a sad day for the organization, losing one of their leaders in the locker room. And I know that you were waiting to hear some joyous, boastful type big Sarge, but right now, John, I just don't feel it, man. I just can't feel it, because Stephon Diggs was someone that I had developed a relationship with in the locker room, man. And to see him not be around is a sad day for the Houston Texans organization. And when you look at it, John, he's one of those guys. His locker is in between CJ Stroud, Joe Mixon, and Tank Dell. That right there is pretty much your Houston Texans offense. And for those guys to be sitting there amongst each other, just talking football, but more importantly, talking about life, Stephon Diggs' leadership in the locker room is going to be sorely missed. He's one of those guys that not only helped out the wide receivers, but also helped out the defensive backs. I think that I've told this story before. I've shared this story, but I'll share it again. During training camp, we got a chance to talk to Jalen Petrie. He was the last one to speak, and Stephon Diggs waited until he was finished with his press conference so they could go over routes. Those two were two people that were going back and forth with each other the entire time during training camp, and then as soon as practice was over, they get with each other on the sideline, and then they will go over, okay, well, this is the route that I beat you on. This is how you could prevent me from doing it. And then Jalen Petrie would say, well, as a defensive back, this is what I'm looking for, so you might want to do this. John, he got a very, very bad rap coming into Houston for his time in Minnesota, for his time in Buffalo. And he's one of those guys where you're going to miss not only his production on the field. And I understand that he didn't have the best. I mean, 47 catches, 496 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's kind of low for Stephon Diggs' standard, but just him being on the field allowed other things to happen, John. So right now, I'm kind of, sad for the Texans fans who won't get a chance to see Stephon Diggs, participate in any more games for the rest of the season. The organization loses a leader. He's going to be back in that locker room after he, heals up a little bit. But, just him being on the field, just having his voice. But John, let me tell you this. Happy days are here again. The Houston Texans got some young wide receivers, John, that is going to step on the field and finally prove what they can do. I know.
I can't wait to talk to you about that. I cannot wait to talk to you about that because I think that's the perfect way for us to look at how can the Texans survive moving forward. Just a little bit about Stephon Diggs. When he first got to Houston, he had 3 years left on that deal. The Houston Texans voided that deal. So I do think that this is a situation for the Texans to do a couple of things. Number one, see who they got. We'll talk about that. But also, he was up in age, and that allows for them the flexibility into going into next offseason with Stephon Diggs. Hey, we want you to come back, but the way that things ended, can we get you back at a cheaper price? And I think that's the fair reality of the situation. But to your point, I think more importantly, you talk about him and that relationship he built with with Jalen Petrie and the other defensive backs on his team. Kamari Lassiter, we saw them go at it at practice. What he was able to do, and not only for the DBs, but for that wide receiver room and for this offense and for this team, go back to that Green Bay Packers game. Who was out there by himself going up against 53-plus men of a team? That was
like the Mo City Don, 0, 1 deep.
1 deep, and he brought that attitude to Houston that I think a lot of us behind the scenes have been wanting to see. Just like the talent is there, but they need a couple of dogs, and they need a couple of guys that are ready to fight, and that's Stephon Diggs. And so, yeah, listen, he came into this situation clear-cut number 2 receiver. Like we all ended off last year saying to ourselves, Nico Collins is this team's number 1. And for some people that need a reassurance, well, we saw it at practice.
Yeah.
But for Stephon Diggs to come into this situation here in Houston and to be a clear-cut number 2 and have almost 500 yards through 8 weeks and give Houston something in the air and on the ground, but ultimately, and I think his biggest role was to be that big dog of a brother to say, y'all got it in you. One thing I love to see was just him and John Mechie mixing it up as much as they did. And whenever John Mechie got a pass, remember the preseason game, who was out there on the field?
Yeah.
Almost on the 40 line, it was Stephon Diggs. So for the Houston Texans, if we look strictly at his impact, they are losing somebody that meant a lot to their locker room. CJ Stroud was asked about just emotionally processing Diggs being injured. He said it sucks. It's not easy. It's not something that I can just have a whole bunch of words for. I just hope and I try to wrap my mind around what happened, but it's tough. You can't really think too positive about it. You try to think positive about it, but it's not a bunch of positive thoughts, and I really feel bad for him. So that's coming from the leader of the team.
Yeah.
And you mentioned those guys sit by each other. They talk and chop it up all the time. They were going over how they can get better all the time. And so they're losing that guy. Yeah, he'll be around the locker room. Yeah, he'll be around the franchise once he heals up and goes through the surgery process. But it means a lot to have him suited up on Sundays, on Thursdays, on Monday nights whenever they get a chance. So I do think the Houston Texans are losing somebody that meant a lot to this culture that they have been working hard to refine since bringing in DeMeco Ryans. I think he was an extension of the attitude side of DeMeco Ryans. And so that hurts for the Houston Texans. But now on the other side, listen, we got to talk about how they can survive moving forward without Stephon Diggs yet.
I was going to say just real quick, I also feel bad for Stephon Diggs because he bet on himself. And he came here with a 1-year contract, and he still had years left on his contract, and he got those voided because he wanted to become a free agent after this year. This was like a prove-it deal for him, and now with what he's going through, I don't know how many teams coming off of what he's about to go through. I don't know how many teams will give him a long-term deal now with his age and that injury.
And hopefully, if things can work out between it, because I would like to see Stephon back here in Houston.
Yes, me too.
And I think Houston needs to, ultimately upgrade a little bit. But Stephon can really be what Robert Woods is for this team right now.
Yes.
He's always been,
Robert Woods.
to Robert Woods, but he's always been a much better talent. So you can bring him back on a cheaper deal and allow yourself as a team the flexibility to upgrade. You're looking at, once again, a very dangerous wide receiver room. You got guys that can do a bunch of different things. Now, for the Texans, they play on Thursday, short week, so they will see who they have on this roster moving forward to complete the year. Nico Collins does come back in about a week or so, but it will be tough to see how they can move forward and survive without Stephon Diggs.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. And that winning $5 bet could come with a Week 9 NFL game. Thursday night features a desperate New York Jets side against the first-place team in Houston. FanDuel likes the desperation. They have Aaron Rodgers and company favored by 1.5 points. I mean, the Texans and the Jets have opposite records, but I guess the Texans are hurt at receiver. I don't know. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
The Dallas Mavericks get a win on the road, second night of a back-to-back against the Timberwolves. Luke.
You are Locked On Mavs.
Great, Rusty.
Your daily Dallas Mavericks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
We got to start here, gentlemen. The Mavs, second night of a back-to-back against the Timberwolves, the best defensive team in the NBA last season. They come out, and Anthony Edwards goes off in the first quarter. 24 points. They're draining and bombing threes all over the place. 6 of 8 from 3 in this game. And he finished with 24 points in that first quarter and finishes the game with 37. So he only scored 13 the whole rest of the game. Didn't even score any in the second quarter. And Kyrie Irving beats him to it. 35 points for Kyrie. Carries the way for this team. Hit 6 threes of his own. Was just hitting threes on anybody, any switch, anybody coming at him. Isaac, we saw Kyrie just carry this team. It's exactly what this Mavs team needed.
Oh, it was that third quarter from Kyrie. I mean, we still haven't seen Luka kind of like put it all together yet in these first 4 games. He's still struggling, and it's okay to say he's struggling. I know, Nick and Slightly did a hit piece on him last night, but it's okay to say Luka's struggling. And guys, didn't we like pray for times like these that like, man,
you're the pastor.
One day Luka is not going to have to go supernova, and we're going to win basketball games one day though. And that day's here. And it's like, okay, it's fine. Like Luka's going to be fine. And, but yeah, to see Kyrie do his thing tonight, especially in that third quarter, I mean, what he finished with in the third tonight, because at one point, I mean, I'm like, all right, how many buckets are you going to finish with here? He had 16 points there in the third and hit 4 threes, 6 of 10 from the field. And is this a kind of a classic Kyrie? I mean, we saw how many 20-point quarters did we have last year of Kyrie in the third, but he just took it over. He had some big moments late. That's what you got to have from your leader in Kyrie.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really encouraging team win where I think everybody contributed in a positive way pretty much who was on the court. And Kyrie just, man, I mean, when he's like this, every time he gets to his spot, it feels like it's an automatic bucket. All of his mid-range pull-ups feels like he's 1 inch from the rim. I don't know how to describe it. Like when he's going and he's pulling up from the elbow, it feels like when you're watching, he's just like about to just put the ball into the, like,
He's
it just
Wemby.
feels that automatic. Like, it's insane. But yeah, he was awesome. That's why you go out and you trade for that guy, a guy like Kyrie Irving, because that's what he's capable of doing.
You gave Reggie's line from last year. That was Reggie's line every single game, every single episode. That's why you go. That's why you go trade for Kyrie Irving. That's why you bring a guy in. He was right.
It was a point of contention for a long time about whether or not it would work, and silly thing to talk about.
But it's one of those things where it's like, if you would have said early on in Luka's career, I'm like, hey, we're going to have somebody here coming up in the next few years that at the end of the game, you're going to be completely okay with that guy having the ball instead of Luka. I'd be like, did we really go get that guy? Like, did we actually land that guy in free agency or trade? That seems really hard to do. And I'm not going to lie. There were times tonight, I'm like, Luka, kind of just give it to Kyrie. Like, kind of just let him, like, kind of run the show late. He's still just trying to find his groove. So he's kind of, it feels like he's forcing it a little bit, but he's trying to get in rhythm so bad. But yeah, especially towards the end when Minnesota was going on their little runs here and there, I was like, all right, let's just kind of let Kyrie run the show.
And we've had the argument in the past. I mean, way in the past. I mean, years and years ago about Zach LaVine as the second star or whoever else. And like, imagine all the different iterations of players that Mavs fans have wanted, that they've, people have talked about that could be the second star. And for it to be Kyrie, for a guy that you are comfortable taking over in the fourth quarter, it's kind of amazing. Looking back, it's an amazing move by Nico Harrison.
They let one go in Christian Wood. So
hey, he never got a chance.
No, he never got the
give
chance.
Give him a chance.
Give him a chance.
Give him a chance.
Come on.
The thing with Kyrie is he can score on anybody. There's anybody in front of him. I was reminded of the Anthony Edwards before the playoff series where he was like, I want to pick up Kyrie, and he did pick up Kyrie at the beginning, and I think the same thing happened in this one. He ran out of gas at the end. Anthony Edwards ran out of gas at the end of this game, and Kyrie didn't. Kyrie was able to put it on and really go off in that third quarter. And I think that was a big deal. Like, I think that really swung the game. Anthony Edwards may have dealt with some leg or knee injury. Like, he was holding his leg in a weird way towards the end of this game, but I thought Kyrie outplayed him definitely in the second half.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give Anthony Edwards some bail here. He had two separate ankle injuries and then a groin injury over the course of the first 3 quarters of this game. So I'll give him some bail there. But yeah, I mean, this is something Anthony Edwards is going to have to figure out if he is to take that leap into the stratosphere that some people, honestly, myself included, think that he can get to. It's just getting over this little hump.
The way he said some people, I was like, oh.
No. I think he could be that guy as well.
He is pretty dang good. That first quarter, I was like, this is just dumb. Like, just stop. And even some of those last threes that he hit, I mean, they were hands in the face. They weren't all wide open. But, yeah, I mean, their second star on their team, too, Rudy Gobert, had a big night.
I don't even know what he did.
He did not have a big night. No, but it was led by Kyrie. Kyrie made it happen. 35 points. He had 5 assists. Finished out the game. But if we're just talking about who helped win this game, like Luka did, for all we're talking about with Luka, he did shoot 37%, 10 of 27 from the field, 24 points for Luka. But he had some tough clutch buckets late, like just some really big ones. The 32 foot, that's official. That's what the official distance was. 32-foot 3 that bombed, made it 117 to 109 with a minute left. Like, that basically sealed the game. He also had the scoop layup around Gobert with 2 minutes left. That made it a 5-point game again. He had a couple other buckets in a row in the fourth quarter. Like, Luka kind of saved his buckets, right? That's 4 buckets that he made in the fourth quarter. He kind of saved all of them for the end.
Yeah, 11 points, 5 of 10 in the fourth quarter. I thought he was just, his shot selection was much better in that quarter. He got to his spots, and I'm cool with the mid-range jumpers. The mid-range jumpers I haven't liked from him so far this season are those 17-foot, step back long twos that I just don't think are very good shots to begin with. But he had a nice little baseline fadeaway against Jaden McDaniels. That's his shot. Had a tough, fadeaway at the free throw line. That's a shot we've seen him hit time and time again. And then that classic. I mean, you knew that three. That's what's crazy is you knew that three was going in the moment it left his hands. Like, you knew it. It was just classic. 0 of 8 from 3 or 0 of 7, whatever he was up until that shot that he was going to hit that one. He's the biggest troll in the league.
God, you have to just hate him so bad If you're a season ticket holder in Minnesota, you're like, yes, you've sucked this game, which he didn't suck, but it's like I'm picturing like a fan there and at the like, oh, you're talking to the refs, all this stuff, and then he hits that shot and he yells at all of us, and it's like, I hate him. I hate him so much. But yeah, I mean, as soon as he let go of it, it's like, all right, well, this is deja vu again.
You're probably sitting there going, at least it's not going to be Luka that beats us this time. Because he tried that same 3 against Gobert, same exact spot, ISO'd on him. He tried the same exact play and it missed. And then later he hit that crazy 3 from 32 feet, which was just wild.